The virtue signals are going out at Disney. Now, I know this is a little bit of a last week's news today, but listen, I was busy last week and I do want to talk about this, particularly in the context of yesterday's video, where I talked about how the right wing has essentially been granted the role of mystics in the current day world, the guardians of long-lost entertainment knowledge, which works out very well, of course, with Disney, which used to be pretty much the unrivaled champion of children's entertainment, whereas today they genuinely struggle to make ends meet, even though they are in possession of one of the biggest, most famous franchises ever, Star Wars, which the company has managed somehow to drive into the ground. So, in and of itself, the fact that Disney has decided to drop terms like diversity and DEI from their various financial statements and economic nonsense business reports is not in isolation that big of a deal. However, nothing ever happens in isolation, because to truly understand what this means, we've got to ask ourselves, why were these terms introduced to begin with? Why did Disney, the enormous $100 billion corporation, feel the need to add in their business plan essentially a prayer? Oh, to the they, them, oh most diverse, please spare us from the fires of eternal cancellation. Well, it was because the left wing's primary claim to power was, well, institutional, political, and mob justice in essence. The left didn't really have a particularly positive future for us, or at the very least they don't have today. At some point they were telling us that, diversity will make everything better. If you want to future-proof your company, you've got to go for diversity. Not diversity of thought, mind you, diversity of skin color, because that will somehow make you more profitable. And, well, since Disney started doing this in 2019, Disney hasn't exactly gotten a whole lot more profitable, shall we say. The promise that diversity would bring its own rewards have been proven false, and since that was the only real positive narrative that the progressives had, once it was proven dead, the only thing that remained was the stick. And a large part of the appeal to the buzzwords, the prayers, was indeed fear of the stick. Because again, the left had enormous cancellation powers back in the day. They could get people fired from not just their jobs.
Breaking news!
Why? Not just their jobs, but from friends, families, social circles, events, company associations, etc., etc., etc. If the left wielded its stick with intent, it could literally ruin your life, and corporations feared the same thing, as a fair few projects and corporations did take some serious dings from left-wing cancellation movements, which often became mainstream media news. But they have proven themselves to have lost that power recently, and so they are sitting there with not really any enforcement power. They no longer have the ability to force a company to do what they want out of fear of retaliation, and they don't have a positive view of the future, because as we talked about in yesterday's video, the left wing views virtually everything we want to see in entertainment as somehow bad. They were the ones who literally did take away the old school entertainment. They took it away from you. As one chatter in fact commented quite brilliantly on the video, it wasn't that the next generation missed out on this, it was that it was taken away from them via the general brain rot in the creative spheres of the Western world in total, which is also why people have been moving over to manga, and even now more and more Chinese entertainment as well. So, the right now has actually a positive message for the future, a demonstrably positive message as well. They can hold up that entertainment. They can declare themselves to be the mystics that know the old lost knowledge, that can bring to light shows that were once absolute smash successes, and they don't even need to be that difficult to repeat either. At the end of the day, the absolute surprise hit of this year, Dispatch, is a very simplistic superhero story. I'm currently replaying it now because I missed it, frankly, and there is so much of it that is very plain, very basic, and yet also quite intelligent in a subdued way. Take Phenomenon, for example. His initial introduction that everybody thought he was the asshole villain comes across not because he's actually a bad guy, but because he is actually literally an alien. When he asks Robert Robertson why he's so small and weak, it isn't because he wants to be an asshole. He's not cognizant of the fact that he's being an asshole. He looks at you, a normal human being, and thinks, wow, you are quite small and weak compared to me, a fucking Superman clone. Because, obviously. And this is the kind of thing that we don't have today. One of the beautiful things with Dispatch is that it took itself actually relatively seriously. It wasn't a parody of superheroes, despite in many ways almost appearing to be one. Indeed, I assumed it to be one to begin with, but it dared to be genuine, something we just can't do today, unless, amusingly enough, it is not our story to tell. There was another show recently that was quite fascinating, Chief of War, with that guy who played Aquaman, whose name escapes me at the moment, but it is a story about Polynesian island tribes waging war against one another and their old histories. Okay. Now, if one were to cover the histories of, say, a European nation, like the currently ongoing Robin Hood, a great deal of the staff, the populace there, would suddenly be a very different shade than they were in real life, or even that they are today. Yet in the Chief of War, no white Polynesians, no black Polynesians, no Asian Polynesians. How odd. And again, it is because they then had an opportunity to tell a somewhat actual real story. Obviously, there are ample diversity hires on the Western side of things in that show as well, but such is life. C'est la vie at this fucking point. But, again, the fact that Disney is now no longer afraid of the stick, to the point where they no longer wish to show obeisance to it. They no longer kowtow. They no longer speak the holy words of protection, which is all they ever were. Virtue signaling were never an actual expression of genuine belief, in my opinion. They were largely just a shield held up in front of the company to go, no, we're on your side, goddammit. We know how important this is to you. Look, we'll wave your flag, we'll speak your words, don't attack us. And if you want to be extra generous, maybe even consume some of her products. And hey, if the left had been capable of actually carrying out that last step too, perhaps DEI and diversity would have stayed around, because its promises of, well, better governance and more effective companies would have been true. However, the left also categorically failed to actually build up under any of the products they claim to wish, because they do not have that ancient knowledge. They don't have the mysticism that we do. And our mystical knowledge is simply to say that if you're going to make a superhero show, put a superhero in it. Maybe even attractive a female character or two, if you're feeling particularly avant-garde today. And Disney Well, we've talked about this as well. Disney is going to now very slowly begin turning around. They're going to start slowly reducing their investment in these things. They're going to stop kowtowing as we see. The next step will now be to actually begin producing the entertainment that people want to see. And we are in the early stages of that. We've probably got another 2, 3, maybe years ahead of us of mixed results. Definitely, as we are going to see some good stuff, which will lead the way for others, and we will be seeing a lot of bad stuff that has already been in the production tubes now for a year or two. As we now live in an era where, on the one hand, Black Ops 7 comes out, on the other, you've got Dispatch, for example. You've got a mix, and we're going to see that mix for a while, as especially too, Disney is in a little bit of a weird position now, where they've pretty much fired all of the people that could make the old stuff, or they quit, or they died, which is something Ubisoft experienced. Again, my favorite example these days, Dispatch, was created by a large portion of ex-Ubisoft developers who weren't able to make what they wanted to make at Ubisoft. Ubisoft itself is now probably going to have an interesting little, arc as well, as it is probably torn between the Chinese and the Saudis. But, oh well. To return to the point, though, this is actually a very significant development. Again, you know that the opposition has power, institutional power, in companies like Disney when they use their words. Because these aren't simple just words to describe a thing. When they say diversity, they don't mean like diversity of thought, or even diversity of skin color, or even diversity of employment, or diversity of jobs, or investment, etc. That's not what they mean. They mean the political position that is diversity, the explicitly left-wing position that is diversity. And by including that in their official paperwork, Disney is explaining to them that they are on their side, explicitly so. The removal of this language is thus a very big deal. We're not quite so deep into it as to see it replaced with our own language yet, although I am convinced that will come as well. We've already seen games market themselves on being not woke. It's only a question of time until we see a major studio actively market a video game as being anti-woke. That is when we know that the culture war has finally, in essence, concluded. At least for this round, until the wheels on the bus go round and round. Although I am hoping we'll be able to break that wheel at least temporarily. I'd like another 90s for a good 5-6 years, if at all possible. I know that's a lot to ask, but hey, deep down, I am still, surprisingly, an optimist. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section down below. And until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again soon. Have a good day.